Hi, it's Yasmin at Buy Books. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you've not been here before. Today I'm really excited about what I'm about to talk about, but I'm going to do things a little bit different. I'll explain why in a sec. Hi, editing Siobhan here. Oh, I can't hear myself properly with these headphones on. I go into a lot of health stuff in this video. If you want to skip it, I'll put up a time on the screen, so if you go to that point then I start actually talking about the book. Okay, thank you. So first of all, my hairband will probably give away what book I might be reviewing today. Like, how cute is that? It's from another Etsy store. It's called, I don't know if you can see that, 2222 cute. It's another Etsy shop. She actually messaged me not long after I ordered it, and she was like, oh, I haven't got this, I think this was a different material. And she was like, do you mind if I get the other one? And it's going to take a little bit longer. And I thought, it's the post office and it's an international post as well, so I'm not going to swear. And anyway, it wasn't about like that, which actually I think is beautiful anyway. Like, I don't know if you can see the swirls. That's whenever I used to doodle at school, I always used to do swirls like that, so that works for me. Anyway, so obviously today she's finally going to be talking about Midnight Sun. But I have to talk about something else first, because I think if I talk about it, you might understand where I'm coming from when I talk about Twilight and the whole Twilight thing. Because for me, I think my experience with it is a little bit unique, and I say that because I have a unique blood disorder, and it's kind of connected for me. So I have something called, I don't know if you can see it, TTP survivor. I have something called thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, or TTP for short. I'm not going to keep saying the name because it's a freaking mouthful. But in 2008, not long before my son's first birthday actually, I got hospitalised because I was having like all these stomach aches. And one night I just couldn't stop being sick. I'd like, every so often I'd woken up about 3 o'clock in the morning, gone into the bathroom feeling awful, and like the only way I could feel better was to lay on my back on the cold floor in the fetal position until the pain went, and then I get back in bed. And this one night there was no relief, so my parents were like, does she have a stomach ulcer, does she have kidney stones, what's going on? So we went to the hospital. Like, we just checked in, given our name and stuff. We were in the waiting area in A&E. I do know words. But like, again, I decided the cold hard floor was going to be way more comfortable than the nice seating they provided. So I started to go on the floor to crawl into my little comfy position. And my mum kind of grabbed me on both sides of my stomach, and I screamed. And then next thing we know, I'm getting all my blood tests done, and they're asking me questions and all sorts going on. So it turns out, this is going to be such a long story, I'm so sorry. So it turns out I had gallstones at 23 as a skinny woman. The only real explanation we have for why I might have had gallstones is that I used to be vegetarian, and I gave it up when I was pregnant with my son. And an increase in animal fats can cause gallstones, and pregnancy can. So I think like that combination might have given me them, but I might have had them for a long time, because they said my gallbladder was basically a bag of gravel when they took it out. Anyway, so because of my age, because of the way I looked, gallstones were like the last idea they had in their mind. So they kept asking about my drinking habits, and my mum was sitting there going, not her, her older sister, but not her. Because my older sister would like text at 15 from pubs going, and my mum would be like, right, is that the king's head or is that the crown that she's gone to? Whereas me, like, I don't go out very often. I'm like, oh, can I just sit in with a book and a nice cup of tea and 1,000 biscuits? So nothing's really changed. So eventually my mum managed to convince them that I wasn't a raging alcoholic at 23. And, you know, I started to have the tests, and they found a sack of gravel, and they had to give me an endoscopy, like a tube down my throat, so that they could get out the gallstones that were causing a blockage, because the gallstones had given me pancreatitis, which is really risky anyway. But the longer I spent in hospital, sitting there going, there's nothing wrong with me. I couldn't sit up in bed without coughing my head off. And nothing's changed if you've ever seen me like throughout the day. I always have a coughing fit. And it's not the C word. It is related to this whole thing. Anyway, yeah, but they were doing all these tests and they were like, oh, her blood's doing something really strange. Luckily, the head of haematology at my local hospital, he used to work at this hospital in London, and he knew what was going on with me, and I think if I was in anyone else's hands I wouldn't be here today. But he had the contacts and he was like, there's this girl, it almost looks like leukemia, but I'm pretty sure it's TTP. So they said they caught me early, so I spent like 2 weeks in hospital going through all these treatments, getting all my blood changed over. TTP, by the way, try and explain it in layman's terms. I will put a link for the TTP network, which is a great resource if you want to look up what I went through. They explain it so much better than me, because you get so used to hearing things like rituximab and corticosteroids and stuff like that, that it kind of becomes your vocabulary, and then like trying to explain it to people who don't have this history is kind of hard. So basically there's a lot of things that are in your blood. Most people know about the red blood cells, the white blood cells, the platelets. There's also like things like clotting agents, like the one involved in TTP is called von Willebrand factor. There are like hormones and all sorts. The other thing that's important in TTP is something called ADAMTS-13 or ADAMTS-13, which is like an enzyme that controls the von Willebrand factor. So like when your von Willebrand factor is made, it's like this really long sticky string, but the enzyme ADAMTS-13 comes along and chops it up so that it can travel through your bloodstream without causing clots. So with TTP, something happens to the ADAMTS-13, like 80% of people, and I'm not in this 80% because I have to be special, 80% of people have like an antibody that sits on the enzyme, so it inhibits it. But the other 20% of us, we're either born with it anyway, like congenital TTP, which is a little bit of a different story anyway, or we have something happen. So you could have AIDS, you could have HIV, you could take quinine, which is an ingredient in tonic water. I think they've started taking it out of tonic water. It's also an anti-malarial treatment. It's part of a compound that's been in the papers a lot recently, and I think when I heard it I was like, oh my god, I hope I don't get the thing that's going around at the moment, because I will not be able to take that treatment. And I have had that confirmed by the professor of TTP. She's done a few webinars since. I'm going to be all over the place telling this story, I'm so sorry. Yeah, people like me as well who had pancreatitis, cause that inhibitor. So yeah, there are a lot of things that could happen, and you could be any age. Like I've met one other person with pancreatic TTP, and he looked like Santa on a day off in tweed. Like, we did not look alike at all. He was in his 50s, beard, like ruddy complexion, and I was like, we're representing a curve here. Not. My bad humour is how I got through it, I have to admit. Anyways, the ADAMTS-13 usually breaks down the von Willebrand factor. The antibody or the other inhabitant stops the ADAMTS-13 from cutting up your von Willebrand factor. So it's like this long sticky strand floating in your bloodstream, and it's used to like stop bruising and cuts and stuff like that, and it like sticks to your platelets and your white blood cells. So it going around in your system the way it does in a TTP patient. Oh my god, it's like nearly 10 minutes and I'm just talking about TTP. I told you it's going to be a long one, I'm so sorry. But this, I swear this will have a reason. Anyway, so it causes clots in your capillaries. Not necessarily something big enough to give you a heart attack, but like my one, my hands are swollen up while I was in hospital, and when they went down I still had a lump on the back of this hand, so I think that's where my clots were. So but that's not going to give me a heart attack, but it was starving my body of nutrients. Like, your red blood cells can't push past the clot, and so they get shredded up, and then your body can't reproduce them quick enough, so you get like all these deformed red blood cells in your stream. And because your body's realised, like, hey, we sent out, like, I don't know, 10,000 white blood cells, like, last pump around the body, and we've only got 4,000 back. We'll send more. At first it looks like, because your platelets are dropping, your red blood cells are dropping, but your white blood cells are going up. At first I think it's like leukemia. That's why it got mentioned. My mum heard the nurses talking about it on the ward, and she's a nurse herself, so she was like, what's going on with my daughter? But then eventually the white blood cells, they just can't reproduce either, so they start coming down. And like, I know there was a story of a man on the south coast of England who hit 0 platelets, and they blue lighted him. They like closed the motorway just to get him up to London for his treatment, because it was that or die. It's a true medical emergency. Like, you only have like a small window. I know there are cases of people who like have heart attacks or strokes or whatever because of the TTP, because other elements of their system are like getting disrupted. Like, your brain's being starved of oxygen, that might send a signal down to your heart so like heart attacks are possible. It's not because of the clot. I think that's right. Professor Scully is gonna like be like, Siobhan, you got it all wrong. Definitely check out my resource, because I will get things wrong. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so things like that can happen, and people have been in situations where the hospitals are treating the stroke or they're treating the heart attack, and the TTP is going unnoticed, and then people die because they've run out of blood, although they probably won't. Like, I think I was told you would have died of a stroke before you ever run out of blood, and like I said, they caught me early. Most people have a count of about 150 to 400 platelets in their blood, and I was down to about 30 when I got transferred. So like, so you usually go on something called a pheresis machine, which they also give to, I think, cancer patients, like if their T cells have reproduced too much or something. I'm not sure. They definitely use them in cancer as well, but like, basically they're these machines that like spin around at G-force speed, so there's like a different setting for each blood product. So you go on these machines, like, I don't know if you can see it, I've got a little scar on my neck where they put the cannulas in. So like, I had tubes sticking out my neck. They got hooked up to this machine. It spun around, separating my platelets from the rest of my blood, and put in donated platelets. And like, seriously, you go for about 200 bags in a week. So like, a lot of people helped save my life. Like, I totally respect everyone who did that. So I have a lot of experience with blood and how that can affect you. Like, on that resource, and actually I think I've got a slide from a webinar they've done since we've done lockdown. They got a Zoom subscription, and a Zoom subscription, and they've done a few webinars. They've talked about how TTP and, you know, that thing are similar, but how they're different, and how we as ex-patients with a rare blood condition should deal with what's happening going forward. So that was interesting. Then they've, like, one thing that we all talk about is the after effects, because at the time I was being treated, they were still working on saving everyone. I think they'd only been using something called rituximab, which is like their wonder drug, for a couple of years. I wasn't allowed it because it would have interfered with the pancreatitis. That would have just inhibited it completely. So I was straight on. I had sorry. I had a couple of painkillers, I think, but other than that, it was straight apheresis because of what was going on with my stomach. I had other things as well, like my lungs had started to collapse and feel liquid as well, which is why the cough is so bad, even now. But I had to have like physiotherapy for stuff like that. And then I think one day I was like, I thought I was very clear in the fact that I had a headache. I was pointing to where it hurt, and they were like starting to do like physio for strokes as well. So I didn't have one, but I was showing signs of going there, and they were already doing all they could. So it's kind of a waiting game for whether I would have had one or not, which is really scary when you're young. I do know someone else who's had strokes really young, and I've seen the way it affects her, and like, I got off so lucky in comparison, I know that. Anyway, I keep going off on like a tangent and then forgetting where I was. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so they've done all these webinars and stuff, and I will put a slide in, because I think it's important to know all the different things. Sorry, Dr. Doubt, for like stealing this as well. But I think it's important to know all the things that can happen if you do lose blood, because the neurological symptoms are so wide ranging. And neurological doesn't just mean like things you're aware of, like the amnesia that comes and stuff like that, like long-term, short-term memory loss. And I actually don't remember a lot of things, I think, since before my son was 5, maybe that. Like, I was awake and I was conscious for things, but my memory has been like a sieve, and it's only in the last few years I've started to retain stuff. And I think like knowing all of this stuff is important, like the way relationships, also because of the brain chemistry and the way you communicate with people as well. It's actually really scary, and I've had 12 years of getting used to it and dealing with it. So like I said, this happened in August 2008. So I've just had my 12 years remission date, which I'm out of the danger zone in terms of relapse from the original moment, but I'm also in the prime age group for TTP, so I'm still not out of the woods. Anyway, so before this all happened, I remember going to Waterstones with my sister and picking up Twilight and being like, oh, what's this about? My sister was like, how you shouldn't have sex before marriage. I was like, put that book back. But after all this happened, my brain was so quiet. Like, it's usually got so much going on, and it was just, I was not used to that. But I couldn't retain anything either. So what he did was read, because that I knew how to do, and I felt like I was getting a bit of me back. I didn't know who I was either. Like, I knew who I was. I knew my name was Siobhan. I knew who my family was. Like, it didn't work that way with my memory loss, but it was like, what do I like? And I'm getting teary-eyed now, thinking about it, because it has been like such an issue for me to deal with and grow from. So while I was on remission, like early remission, while I was off sick from work, and my doctor was like, I've never heard of this, Siobhan. I don't know what's going on. I'll be led by you. You need time off. You need a year off. Have a year off. So she was great in that context, and that really helped me. I did get pushed to go back to work before I was ready, but not by my work and not by my doctor, by everyone else. They're like, do you think you should start working again? It's like, well, we can have this conversation 5 times over and I won't remember it, but yeah, go ahead. Things like that were happening. Like, people would be like, how are you feeling today, Siobhan? And I'd be like, I don't understand what you just said. And I wouldn't. It'd be like, no. What? And I'd make them repeat it over and over, and sometimes like the words would fall into different places, or I'd start analysing each word, and by the time they got to the 4th word, I wouldn't remember what the first word was, but they'd still be talking, and I'm still supposed to like respond. I started doing this like parroting trick as well, so people are like, how are you feeling today, Siobhan? I wouldn't have understood a word, but I've repeated it back to them. How am I feeling? Yeah, how are you feeling? How am I feeling? I gave myself 4 clear cues, and they thought I was just being a bit weird, but it really helped me to like get my brain going. But reading really helped me do that as well. So they started advertising the first film, I think October over in England, and I was like, I really want to watch this, but I don't watch films without reading the book first, because I am that reader. So I did. I read all 4 of the Twilight Saga in 3 days, and this is where the conflict happens for me, because I really liked that you got to see Bella and Edward get to know each other. You got to know Edward a lot better than Bella, I think, in the original series. I'll come on to that when I'm actually reviewing the book, whenever that happens. But there were things that just really stuck in my craw, like when Edward was explaining what happens when they lose blood, and he's like, I just remember everything that ever happened, and I can hear all these things. And I was like, you're wrong, Edward. Oh, I can go running for miles. I was like, I'm sleeping 20 hours a day, but go off. So it's like, it's been this really bittersweet story for me. Like, I really wanted to love it, but those elements really killed it for me. And I think it's just taken me a really long time to just come around to what's happened to me in general, and then just approach the story as a story. And I think now it's been 12 years for me for reading it for the first time and going through everything I went through, and 15 years for Maya to finally release this beast. I think, you know, I've had the time I need to get over the issues I have, because, you know, I can now separate fiction from reality, which I wasn't as great with back then. But also I can appreciate, you know, her skill with language. I've spilled something on this. That was annoying when I did that. I forgot about that. Yeah, her depth of language is incredible. Like, even reading this, I was learning words I hadn't learnt before, like sophistry, I think it is. He says, oh, that would be sophistry, and I was like, sophisticated? What? And I looked it up, and I was like, that's such a great word use. Like, and it works for Edward's voice as well. So yeah, on to Midnight Sun. Obviously there aren't many spoilers because Twilight has been around for ages and everyone knows what the story's about. But I think the beauty of this book is that, well, there's a few things. Like, I really like that you get more depth to other characters. Twilight was very much about fantasizing about Edward, but Midnight Sun, you learn more about Bella, but you also learn more about Edward. You see him more as a all-rounded person. There's still issues with him stalking her and creeping into her room at night. I think a lot of people still see it as insta-love, but with the vampire lore it's explained, and Edward isn't as aware of Bella's feelings as it may appear in Twilight, because we're in Bella's head and she's very much like, I've seen this guy, I want to marry him. Maybe not to that degree, but she's very much like, that one, I want that one. So it's really nice to actually see, like, there are conversations that got glazed over in Twilight that I didn't know about until this book. Like, the CD that Phil lent her, I didn't know it was Linkin Park. Now I know. But she also likes black licorice. What's wrong with you? I actually put on my Facebook, Bella, do you have taste or no? And one of my friends wrote, I like Linkin Park and black licorice. I was like, this is awkward. Oh, but seriously, what's up with black licorice? Like, red licorice, yeah. And I recently tried grape red wines. They're amazing. But yeah, not black licorice. My friend in Norway, Hannah, she once sent me some rusty spiker in English. I did know how to say the Norwegian vowels. Rusty spiker, and she told me the other one and I've forgotten it already. But yeah, they are disgusting. They're like really hard and salty, and no, I like sweet things. Potato chips. So, licorice don't do it for me. But you know, everyone has their flaws, don't they, Bella? Like licorice. I'm not gonna get over that. That's the hill I'm dying on. And also, like, seeing more things like Edward's relationships with his siblings and with his parents, like him and oh my god, I was blanking on his name. Seriously, what the fuck is his name? Oh my god, why am I blanking on his name? Oh, Edward Emmett. Oh my god, that took me too long. I love the relationship between Edward and Emmett. They are so cute together. They're so funny. I love it. Like, more of that, please. And you know, that there are other things like how Alice's visions work that were really interesting to read. And the scenes where Bella wasn't present, like when she was in the hotel with Alice and Jasper, what was Edward doing? And actually, I thought that would be really boring, but it was kind of interesting. And it didn't go on too long, thankfully. But yeah, I've really enjoyed Edward's voice in this, and I think it was worth the wait. And other people have been like 756 pages, and it is 756 pages. Wait a sec. 756 pages. I still loved it. I think it took me a week just because I love you, Maya, but 50-page chapters. I needed like a rest, and I needed a drink, and I needed to like check my pulse after each chapter. Like, I was grateful towards the end because they started getting shorter. I know that sounds really mean. I like keep the length of the book, shorten the length of the chapters, and I will be a happy person. The cover was kind of weird. It's like a bloody pomegranate. Pomegranates are nice. Like, I had some in a salad in Australia when we went for my cousin's wedding. It was so yummy. But it's a reference to Edward consistently describing his relationship with Bella as Hades and Persephone. And it's so cheesy, but I love it. I love the cheese. So I can get over all the blood stuff that's really inaccurate, because you really don't get any faster or smarter or capable when you're ill like that. But yeah, Twilight did help me, and I love it for that. And I just love this book. It was so worth the wait, and I would really love if Maya would do at least Midnight Sun in Edward's voice, because I would love to see things like his connection with Renesmee, like that moment where he accepted the baby that Bella was carrying, and all the other stuff that goes on, like his connection with Arrow could be in there, and like the backstory of him with Jacob. Like, you could do a flashback to the tent conversation that Bella was only half aware of. So I think there could be really good elements. She doesn't necessarily have to write Eclipse and New Moon, because I think New Moon would be interesting to a point, but I think after a while it would end up repetitive until we got to the same point in the actual New Moon. But definitely, like, because originally she just wanted to do Twilight and Breaking Dawn, didn't she? So having like Edward's version of both those stories would just be really, really great. But I don't know if she'd be interested in doing that. I know she said recently she's doing 2 books still in the Fawkes world, and I'd really like one of them to actually be Renesmee, to see how she copes with everything, how she communicates, the connection she has with her father, with Jacob, with her mother, with all the others, like Rosalie. Rosalie became like a really big thing for her, didn't she? Or I really love like an Alice story, because, you know, it was really interesting reading it in Midnight Sun, the way Alice thinks, and, you know, how she considers every single element of a situation, which is really difficult to do, and then apply that to what they're going to do going forward. So yeah, I'm excited for those 2 books. I just wish one of them was Edward's. I think that's all I've got to say, really. I think, you know, for me it is more about like how I felt going into these books and everything that happened to me going into these books, than it is necessarily about her writing. I think her writing has kind of stood the test of time for me. Like, there are other authors I read where I can't read certain books now. Like, I'm sorry, like, and it's not because of all the recent negativity with particular author views, but for me, I was reading the series to my son when he was a baby. I was determined to finish it by the time he was 5, and I think it was 5.5 when I managed it. The first 3, like, they've got such good ideas, but sometimes, like, there'll be a paragraph and then the next paragraph will be completely unrelated and there is no flow, and it really irritated me. And it was only Goblet of Fire, I think, where I started to relax on that, and I started to see the cohesion between the different things. And I think if she were to go back and rewrite the first 3 novels and not change anything per se, like, the storyline still flowed the same, the conversations were the same, the revelations were the same, but just tighten up the language a little bit, I would probably buy them, maybe secondhand. But but yeah, but I've never had that with Twilight. Sometimes I've had like moments where I've never recreated the 3-day sit down read through it all, but I can read through those books and still enjoy it, still, you know, find new things I enjoy, except maybe Jacob talking the wolf packs. What was that? I definitely enjoy the books more than the movies as well, I think. And that's not a discredit to the actors. I think the actors did a stellar job, and I think anyone who doesn't realise that Kristen Stewart played Bella to a T doesn't really understand how talented they all are. But I think things like the colour schemes that they had, like the tonal systems, and it didn't really work for me. I have Catherine Hardwicke who did the first one. I've seen another film she did that Nikki Reed was actually in, 13, and it was amazing, and she kind of drained all the colour out and made it very blue at the end, and it worked so well for the narrative. But I didn't feel that with Twilight when she did it with Twilight. I think some of the choices in like the editorial stuff, like, you know, they put too much emphasis on some things that didn't stick as well as like other scenes that would have worked well from the books. But you know, there's all sorts of reasons why those things don't come into play, so I won't be too mad about them, but I still prefer the books, and I know that makes me that reader. There are movies I've enjoyed better than the books, I promise. I can't think of any right now, but there are. It's just that I think, you know, you get an idea in your head, and then having it play out in front, there's always things that you would have done differently as, you know, someone who's got cinema in your own head, than what is physically possible for actual directors in terms of what they can spend money on and what's physically possible and stuff like that. I have gone on so many tangents in this video. I'm so sorry, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about TTP, if I did not explain it very well, and I think I've explained why I didn't explain it very well in my explanation, maybe. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Comment down below. I'll be happy to answer as well as I can, or link you to something that can explain it a lot better than this mouth. I guess I'll see you guys later. Thank you for watching.